Badlands, running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
But it's totally corrupt. The people are incompetent.
Both sides are full of crap. They're liars, and we have to sweep the entire system out of the way.
Just to be clear, when we say stop fact-checking, we mean stop freaking lying.
There's a lot of injustice and there's a lot of bullshit in our justice system that needs to be cleaned up.
We're seeing the spell wear off, the hypnosis wear off.
It's just a creation that exists in the minds of people who are still addicted to the central narrative.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Badlands Daily. And it's special because I'm back on the show. It's been the longest time since I've hosted this thing. Gordon, sir, how you doing?
Doing great, John. Welcome back. Welcome back to Daily. Hell of a weekend, man. What a crazy, crazy weekend.
It's been insane.
Yeah. Y'all did a good job covering it Saturday night because I know it's hard to jump in like hours after something happens, something that mimetic, like that enormous, and be able to talk about it and consider all the different angles and everything. So hat tip to y'all. We're also thinking about Ash. She's in court this week with her case. Brian is there with her covering it. So I'm sure we'll get updates from them this week.
For sure, yeah. He'll be doing some daily check-ins throughout the week. Probably not today since I don't think the thing has started yet, but the rest of the week they'll be checking in. So yes, thoughts are definitely with Ash, and make sure you guys are keeping her in your prayers. I am not at my normal setup, so internet might be a little wonky. I'm getting like the internet symbol on my stream here, but as long as you can hear me all right, that's all I really care about. We are going to talk quite a bit about the Trump assassination attempt. I mean, it's been a couple days now. A lot more information has come in. But before we do any of that, and before we even get to our sponsors, there is some breaking news, and I think we need to show this. Eileen Cannon has apparently dismissed Trump's classified documents case, which is huge, guys. This is huge. Let me read this real quick from... This is Greg Price on Twitter, and we'll get more information. This literally just broke a minute before we went live here, but order granting motion to dismiss superseding indictment based on appointments clause violation. Former President Trump's motion to dismiss indictment based on the unlawful appointment and funding of special counsel Jack Smith is granted in accordance with this order. The superseding indictment is dismissed because special counsel Smith's appointment violates the appointments clause of the United States Constitution. And special counsel Smith's use of a permanent indefinite appropriation also violates the appropriations clause, but the court need not address the proper remedy for that funding violation given the dismissal on appointments clause grounds. The effect of this order is confined to this proceeding. And my first initial thoughts on this are the immunity decision from the Supreme Court, and we had Justice Clarence Thomas, and his opinion, in addition to the majority opinion, he gave another one, and it was all about this. And we were talking at the time about how he was kind of throwing Eileen Cannon a bone here. This is crazy.
It's awesome. It's great. I mean, the timing of it is obviously very ideal. And I'm glad to see it wrap up like this. I was a little worried that maybe some of these judges might try to go a little rogue and like defy the Supreme Court. So it's nice to see this, at least this one, get wrapped up. Does this mean that Jack Smith is done? Is this the only line he had in the water, or does he have other cases standing out there?
Oh, I mean, well, he still's the DC case.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And that's a different judge. They might completely rule differently. I'm assuming he's going to appeal this. There's a 93-page ruling, it looks like, out here. I'll share this on the screen. And so obviously we'll probably discuss this more in detail on Wednesday's Power Hour once I've had some time to actually read through all this. But this is some huge news. And, actually over the weekend, one of my favorite guys to keep tabs on right now, Robert O'Brien, him and Mike Lee of Utah, in the immediate aftermath of Trump's assassination attempt there, they were calling for, if you want to unite the country, Biden, you essentially pardon Trump. I don't think they phrased it quite like that. And you know what? Maybe instead of just paraphrasing, I will pull up the exact quote, because I thought this is a brilliant idea, but it's even a better idea if all these cases against Trump get thrown out by the judges and not the Biden administration, because that looks worse optically for Biden. And
definitely. Definitely.
Here's what Robert O'Brien said. We've got to take the political temperature down as evidenced by what happened in Pennsylvania today. We call on President Biden to immediately order that all federal criminal charges against President Trump be dropped, and to ask the governors of New York and Georgia to do the same. And one of the judges just stepped up and did it themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Crazy stuff. We'll see if we get more information on that as we go through here today. This episode will probably not be the typical Badlands daily length that you are used to when it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours long, but we'll do our best to get you as informed as we can. Let's get to our sponsor of today's show before we get too far into the weeds here, and that is CB Distillery. Let me guess, guys, your medicine cabinet is crammed with stuff that doesn't work. You still aren't sleeping, you still hurt, and you're still stressed out, especially after what happened this weekend. That is how it was for me. So I cleared out my cabinet and reset my health with CBD from CB Distillery. It's been a real game changer. CB Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality, clean ingredients. There's no fluff, no fillers, just pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. In 2 non-clinical surveys, 81% of customers experienced more calm. 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity, and an impressive 90% said that they slept better on CBD. If you struggle with a health concern and haven't found relief, make the change like I did to CB Distillery. With over 2 million satisfied customers and a solid 100% money-back guarantee, CB Distillery is the source you can trust. And you can get a 20% discount to get you started. Visit cbdistillery.com. Use promo code Badlands for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code Badlands. All right, man. Is this your first stream since everything happened?
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, do you want to give your thoughts on everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think y'all did a really good job on Saturday night of covering it and kind of giving all the different potential angles that early on, the consideration they deserve. Obviously, the 2 opposing sides would be like it's a staged somehow event, which I actually see a lot of the media now pushing those narratives that, or at least a lot of people on the left who oppose Trump and never Trumpers all pushing that narrative, which is really interesting. It
is interesting. The left is pushing that. From what
I mean, I see a lot of people on the left, like on social media, pushing the idea that it was staged. And then I think last night they were on Defect. I was listening to Defected a little bit while I was doing my write-ups for the brief, and some people were rumble ranting that their spouses who don't like Trump were saying the same thing. And I don't know if they're getting that off of social media, but you have people who are not necessarily invested, certainly not invested in like the stuff that we look into and research, flushing those ideas out of like fake or staged events. So that's interesting to get into the zeitgeist. If it's not that though, if there was where I ultimately fall on is this: if because I saw people on Saturday night, like in the chat, like saying this, and I think there's some confusion. If a projectile flew past Donald Trump's head, it's not a staged event, right? I mean, the idea, like I saw some people saying like no one's going to shoot a bullet past Donald Trump's head as part of like an op, and I completely agree with that. Like if a projectile actually flew past his head, then it was not an op and it was real. And out of respect for Donald Trump and everything that's going on right now, and the man that was killed, I would say that I'm going to accept it for what it is at the narrative level for right now. And a bullet did actually fly through his ear, and God intervened and protected him. And I don't really know how else to look at it other than that, is that he turned his head at the last minute. And there was a really, really good diagram that Chris posted on Telegram that showed, like, if he hadn't turned his head, it would have gone in the back of his head. So it's like the fact that he turned his head at the last second, man, it's wild.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. I think this is probably the diagram you're talking about.
Yes, that's the diagram I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. We did explore some of the alternative of, what if this was staged and planned. And I think the reason people come to that conclusion is because of the effect that this is going to have on Trump's support and Trump's base, and people rallying around Trump and really getting into this movement. I think that's going to be tangible. I think this does help his case. Like Bernie Bright said, this almost makes a martyr out of him without having for him to actually die, for it to happen. And so I get where people are coming from, but I do agree with you. And I'm pretty skeptical when it comes to most things anyway. My first initial reaction, and still remaining to this day, is that this was a genuine thing that happened. And I think we approach it as such. And, I want to read what Trump said in the immediate aftermath of this, because, and he's had a couple posts, but I want to read this and then discuss a little bit. Let me share this. This is from his Truth Social, and we will play the Biden, clip. We'll talk about who the shooter was. We'll get more detail into this. It'll probably be the bulk of the show today. But Donald Trump on Truth Social. Am I sharing the screen? I am. Okay. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for the rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong, and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through my skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America. And then we also got this from him as well. Donald Trump. Thank you to everyone for your thoughts and prayers yesterday, as it was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening. We will fear not, but instead remain resilient in our faith and defiant in the face of wickedness. Our love goes out to the other victims and their families. We pray for the recovery of those who were wounded and hold in our hearts the memory of the citizen who was so horribly killed. In this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win. I truly love our country, love you all, and look forward to speaking to our great nation this week from Wisconsin. And that's speaking of the RNC, which he's there now. Any thoughts on that right away?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he did a really, really good job of coming out and saying the right thing in the right moment. I really like the fact that he's pushing unity right now. I wrote last summer for the Badlands Substack an article called Horseshoe Theory, which theorizes that the far left and the far right, and I'm not talking about the Antifa, like communist people. I'm just talking about the people who've been swept up into the earnest normies who've been swept up in it, are going to come together when they realize that the uniparty is real and exists. And that's going to bring the two populist movements together against the uniparty. And I think that's probably where Trump's going to go from here, is he's going to look to bring the other side in, people who maybe got swept up in the 2020 summer of love, like the emotion of all that and the psyops of all that, who are already very politically active, who are very highly motivated, who are in the activist mindset, who are willing to go out and protest for something they believe in. If they suddenly became pro-Trump, or at least sympathetic to Trump and anti-establishment, that could be really, really powerful. And I think really more so than just winning the election is more about like changing the zeitgeist of America and pushing us back toward like a unified country, as opposed to a very polarized country, which is very easy to destabilize.
Yeah. I've had a little bit more time to digest what took place and kind of think about it more. And like this video I'm playing on the screen here is so powerful. I know I saw briefly a little bit of what they discussed yesterday on Defected, and what I saw was great. The response from that show has been great too. I'd recommend everybody go watch that. But this image of Trump after getting shot, and like this totally just jacks me up. I mean, it's been such a long time since the election was stolen from him, and it almost gets exhausting. I feel like reinvigorated, and it was this moment that I think really does it for me. And you did nail it, with Trump calling for unity after what they did to him. Like he's a better man than I, but it kind of just displays his genuine concern for the direction of the country and his love for this country. Like they literally tried assassinating the president. And this is something I think we all need to be cognizant of. They tried shooting President Trump, like the biggest threat to them that there's ever been, arguably. In my opinion, I think they're going to try stealing an election. Like it's a no-brainer now. If they're willing to try to kill him, they're obviously going to try to steal the election from him. So our job here, our focus, and what we need to unite around is making sure that they cannot get away with it. Like we cannot let that happen. We need to like metaphorically burn this shit to the ground at this point. And yeah. I think it starts with exposing the mainstream media, because they are the reason for this, and they're the reason for every other single problem that we've had. Like they are the enemy of the people. Like Trump said they've lied about the Russia hoax, the impeachment. Like they basically called us all Nazis. They lied about the election. They lied about J6. They basically made Trump a criminal and threw the entire book at him. They've lied about everything. And so like we need to become the news now. And that's all of us. Like I don't think we need to unite around exposing every single one of their lies from here on out. Like this shot at Trump is basically drafting you guys into the narrative war. It's no longer acceptable for people to be apathetic themselves, or to allow their friends and family to be apathetic either. Like this is the time right now where we need to peacefully and patriotically make our voices be heard, and not allow these people to get away with any more of this bullshit. Like it's done. You need to get on social media. You need to get your ass in this thing and start turning the tides in the narrative war. Like we can't allow it to stand any longer.
Nailed it, man. That's exactly it. And I looking around like the social media landscape right now, since Saturday, that seems to be the consistent message from everybody, is that no matter what the truth is about the shooter and like what actually happened that day and like the security failures, etc., this all lays at the feet of the media. The media created this situation. They are at fault here, and that seems to be what everybody agrees on and everybody is saying. And then going back to what you said about Trump using this moment to call for unity, it kind of makes me think about what you and Quast had talked about at previous GARTs, where y'all went back and forth on certain panels, where you talk about the prisoner's dilemma, and you're talking about breaking the cycle of violence and breaking the cycle of hatred. It requires one side to have the maturity and the wisdom to stop and to say, okay, you have hurt me now, but instead of hurting you, I'm going to call for peace. And that's basically what Trump is doing right now.
100%. And no, we should actually talk about the shooter. But speaking of the media and their rhetoric, like they are in such a tough position now, because their calling card, their justification for stealing elections and all the things that they've done to Trump, basically the only move they have at this point is lying about Trump and calling him this evil, terrible person, a threat to democracy. Now, after they all went on social media and made the rounds and made all these statements about, okay, this is unacceptable in this country. We need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to unite, because even the left is like they're putting out very hollow statements, very hypocritical, total bullshit statements, or they're just saying it for the sake of saying them. They don't mean it, but they can't. Can they do that anymore? Like, are they going to be able to come out again and continue to call Trump this threat to democracy after what just happened? Because if they do that, I think people are going to see through it. But if they don't do that, what else do they have?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I have seen some of them start to do that. They start to outlets saying, Trump is still a threat to democracy. Let's not forget that. So I am seeing those posts from the corporate outlets that are still pushing that idea that Trump is a threat to democracy, even as he survives an assassination attempt at a political rally.
Yeah, I did see the B. I think we showed this post on Saturday, but Trump indicted for inciting an assassination. That is kind of the vibe we're getting. I don't think this is going to unite Trump's movement with the people on the left who are deranged and actually hate him. But for the middle people, the middle of the road people, the independent thinkers, this is your opportunity to break these people away from their mainstream media sources, or at least get them in the game with alternative sources. Like, this is it. This is your moment, and I think we got to do it. I'm going to play a little bit of Biden's address to the nation, because he came out on the night of the shooting and talked a little bit, and then this was yesterday. He gave about a 6-minute speech. Maybe we won't listen to the whole thing, but we'll listen to a little bit of it. And so if you have any comments or anything you want me to pause, just let me know and I'll do so.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors, we're friends, coworkers, citizens, and most importantly, we're our fellow Americans. We must stand together. Yesterday's shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania calls on all of us to take a step back, take stock of where we are, how we go forward from here. Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured. I spoke with him last night. I'm grateful. He's doing well, and Jill and I keep him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victims who was killed. Corey was a husband, a father, a volunteer firefighter, a hero, sheltering his family from those bullets. We should all hold his family and all those injured in our prayers. Earlier today, I spoke about an ongoing investigation. We do not know the motive of the shooter yet. We don't know his opinions or affiliations. We don't know whether he had help.
I can't even listen to this.
Yeah.
Just so bullshit. But let's talk a little bit about the shooter himself.
Mm-hmm.
We got his name, or who was Thomas Matthew Crooks, what we know about Trump's attempted assassin, 20 years old, from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, and graduated from high school in 2022. Let's see what else we got here. He's the person who attempted to assassinate Trump. Crooks reportedly shot Trump from a rooftop perch some 130 yards away during a rally in a small town, striking him in the upper ear. I think everybody's seen most of the pictures and whatnot. Corey Comparatori, I believe is how you say his name, or Comparator. He's a 50-year-old fire chief from Buffalo. He was killed shielding his family. There's a couple other injuries as well. But yeah, they identified Thomas Matthew Crooks, and there's a lot of misinformation flown around on social media about the shooter. And in the immediate aftermath of this thing going down, I saw a post going around of a guy, and I think I've seen like 4 total suspects up until this guy was for sure named. So I always get scared, and when this stuff happens, to wait like the 48-hour rule. Let's see what happens. But I think one of the most interesting things being floated right now on social media, and I think there's some meat on the bone here, was this just a legitimate failure, or was there something deeper here? Like, was this intentional of some sort to allow this to happen? And I think these are some of the questions that need to be asked, because there's no way that this should have been allowed to happen. And this is from Zero Hedge. Malice or massive incompetence. Eric Prince gives detailed assessment of Secret Service failure. Eric Prince, if you're not familiar, he's the former Blackwater founder. This guy does protective detail. He's done it all over the world. He's an ally of Trump's. This is a pretty good assessment, in my opinion. So we'll read through this. Do you have anything you want to add before we do so?
No, I think that you're spot on. Like, if this was a real shooting, a real event, and right now that's what I'm subscribing to, then it implies that there is a massive failure, and I would say something more malicious than that, for this to have happened. But let's read through it.
Yeah, so this is, I believe he posted this on Twitter, and Zero Hedge is just copying it here. Donald J. Trump is alive today solely due to a bad wind estimate by an evil would-be assassin. As the graphics show, the full value wind of just 5 miles per hour was enough to displace the unconfirmed but likely light 55-grain bullet 2 inches from Donald J. Trump's intended forehead to his ear. Also, as we showed earlier, the way he turned his head was very fortuitous as well. Donald J. Trump was not saved by the United States Secret Service brilliance. The fact that the Secret Service allowed a rifle-armed shooter within 150 yards to a pre-planned event is either malice or massive incompetence. Clearly, there was adequate uncontrolled dead space for a shooter to move into position and take multiple aim shots. Watching the newsreel, one can hear how proximate the shooter is by the very short time lapse between the crack of arriving bullet to the boom of the muzzle blast. And this is something I want to say. I think since like in the last 24 hours, maybe even less, a lot of the blame is being shifted to the local authorities, where the Secret Service, it was outside of their protection area. Because I think the Secret Service themselves, they have the immediate circle of Trump, and then maybe some of the crowd work. But a lot of the, everything outside of the crowd and that short range stuff, like I don't even think the snipers were Secret Service. I'm pretty sure they were local authorities. I think that the jacket the guy's wearing even says that it's like local police or something. But here's a clip I'll play.
And that's a little bit old, that chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
And there's rumors floating around that this sniper guy had the shooter in his sights for like 3 minutes, but didn't get the go ahead. I'm kind of waiting on confirmation of that because I don't think we've seen. I think all I've seen was like a 4chan post, and that could be anybody who posts that. But yeah, I think there are some questions that need to be asked about how this was allowed to happen. I mean, look at this map.
Yeah, the map really says it all. I mean, it's 150 yards is not with a scoped rifle is not a difficult shot for somebody with any sort of like experience with firearms, to make. So to allow that guy, the fact that TMZ has a video of the guy like army crawling up the like prone position, crawling up the roof with his rifle, and people are screaming like there's a shooter on the roof. It's crazy. It's insane that we have this out there.
Yeah, and I think I might have video of that as well. I know there's that interview that we saw kind of going around right away from BBC where they're like, yeah, we were yelling, trying to get the cops to do something about this. There's a story where a gentleman from the local police actually climbed the ladder, had the guy in his sights, and then I don't know if he turned his rifle at him or something, but he ended up going back down the ladder, didn't confront him or anything.
Yeah.
It really feels like this could have been prevented. So, I'm a little worried because I believe we have like the FBI investigating this. That's concerning just because of our feeling on the FBI, and they're not very
Did you see that Ezra Cohen Watnick posted about that?
I didn't.
Yeah, go check his feed. He said that along the lines of the FBI has a lot of political motivations against Donald Trump. Like, should they really be the ones leading this investigation?
Let's see here.
And
I'm talk about his feed right now.
Talk about someone who's like going to know about something like that and have like the insight and that into that element.
Yeah, I don't see anything specifically from him. Oh, here we go. Elements of the FBI with corrupt and political motives have targeted and harassed President Trump for the better part of 8 years. How is it possible this agency, which has a strong appearance of conflict, is now allowed to lead the investigation into the attack on his life? If we've learned anything from the assassination of President Kennedy, it is that we must have a transparent and independent investigation for the good of the country. Less than 24 hours after the attack on President Trump, it is clear that we are headed in the wrong direction. Unfortunately, due to the recent behavior of a significant number of its employees, the FBI is no longer viewed by the public as a trustworthy and independent investigative body. For the sake of the country, we must bring in an agency to investigate that has the public trust. There's also rumors of the Biden administration denying Trump's request for Secret Service. There's just so many questions that need answering after this. He had a couple different posts here though. Man, he's getting so much more like public with his rhetoric too, which is amazing.
Very out of character for him historically. He was like he didn't even have an online presence until like 2 years ago.
Yep. There's this clip from Jesse Waters too. I haven't actually seen this, but it's got Bill Barr.
Interesting. Let's watch it. I haven't seen it either.
You were the Attorney General twice. They're launching this investigation. The FBI is in charge. Do you trust this FBI to do a clean investigation?
I think they should be given the chance to do the investigation.
That hesitation says everything you need to know. He does not trust them, but he's about to give a political answer, it sounds like.
But I think Congress will be watching every step and do their own investigation. And I think there's a lot to investigate. I think those Secret Service agents on the detail, there's no question in my mind that they're loyal and brave and that they would take a bullet for President Trump. But there was obvious screw ups there that have to be looked at carefully. And then I agree with your guest, Corey, that I think not only in the Secret Service, but in other law enforcement agencies, this DEI agenda is and the destruction of meritocracy is affecting the competence levels of these agencies.
And quickly, would you fire the Secret Service Director Cheadle?
I would fire her simply for having a tin ear and not coming out and being visible and saying something. Even if we don't know the story, I think it's still important to start the discussion and the transparency with the American people. And the way they handled today by trying to just brief Milwaukee and not saying anything about it was so ham-handed that I would fire her just for not understanding how the responsibility of government officials to interact with the public.
All right. I would too. Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much.
Man, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We also got this. So we were talking about the mainstream media and their rhetoric. I just want to say this. MSNBC yanked anti-Trump Morning Joe off the air this morning following the assassination attempt. They're going to come back Tuesday, but I mean, this is the guy, Morning Joe, right? Who Biden is.
He's cogent.
Just totally Trump deranged. And they wouldn't even let him take the air this morning because of his rhetoric. I mean, if that's them acknowledging that they can't trust themselves to say something, that won't be inflammatory. I think that's powerful.
Damning. It's very,
Absolutely.
very damning. And to what Ezra was saying, and even Bill Barr, the problem now is that the public doesn't trust these institutions anymore. Not only the FBI, but also the mainstream media. The mainstream media is a little less significant because they're not government, but the FBI is a government agency. And no matter what the FBI comes back with, even if they come out with the complete and total honest truth and actually figure out what happened that day, how many people are actually going to believe them because of their misconduct over the past however many years? So that's a real problem. How do we fix that?
Yeah. And what? Speaking of the FBI or the Secret Service director, I think this is her. And I think this is her saying, yeah, this is her.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030 and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
That workforce will be pivotal for the 2024 campaign season, which for the first time includes a former president who already has lifetime protection. Agents were there when Donald Trump was arraigned in New York.
We were able to work out the details ahead of time of how that particular day was going to go, but we will always ensure the safety of all of our protectees that we have.
The service has a zero-fail mission, a mission officers are training to uphold, pretending this field is the most famous address in America.
Crazy. I know she was in Secret Service before. She was on the Biden detail. when he was vice president. I think she's actually listed as one of the Secret Service agents that's with them. She's in the laptop, essentially, like not anything nefarious, but on some of those overseas trips. But left to go to Pepsi Cola. Like she was with Pepsi for like 3-4 years before she came back in as director. It's just the whole thing it's insane, man. It's possible it's incompetence, like with all the DEI hires and that right there. But again, I'm with the narrative around this already, especially from some of these key people. It does seem more intentional than not, but we shall see.
Yeah. Well, Kyle brought up some good points last night. I defected. He, this was his own research. I haven't seen this myself, but he's done the dig here that Trump has been so active and moving around that they've had to rotate out so many Secret Service agents that he basically had what Kyle described as a hodgepodge of agents this past weekend. It wasn't his normal detail. So that certainly contributes to any sort of like idea that this was all incompetence. He also pointed out that once Trump gets nominated this week at the RNC, I think his Secret Service detail like automatically escalates, like it grows. So this kind of what this presented like the final opportunity to have this reduced protection around him. And, this would have been the time to take the shot if you are an organization or an individual who understands all of that and does and wants to go after Trump. So I thought those were really interesting points. The other one that makes me think of that is, remember when Trump went into Atlanta and got his mugshot taken? Do you remember the level of detail of security he had around him? The guys who got out of the car. I mean, those guys were intimidating. Like those guys were all over the place, and they seemed like they meant business. Like no one was going to touch Trump, like when he was going through Atlanta like that. And so it just makes me think the contrast between that and then what we saw this past weekend definitely raises questions that I think rather than focusing on the was it staged like debate, I think that's kind of a waste of energy right now. I think we should be focusing on how did this happen? Let's take the narrative and run with it. And where is the deficiency?
Totally agree. We have a statement from Trump that just came out about a minute ago. I want to go to this. And because I believe this is about the Florida dismissal. Make sure I'm sharing this on the screen. There we go. As we move forward in uniting our nation after the horrific events on Saturday, this dismissal of the lawless indictment in Florida should be just the first step, followed quickly by the dismissal of all the witch hunts. The January 6th hoax in Washington, D.C., the Manhattan's DA zombie case, the New York AG scam, fake claims about a woman I never met, a decades-old photo in a line with her then-husband does not count, and the Georgia perfect phone call charges. The Democrat Justice Department coordinated all of these political attacks, which are an election interference conspiracy against Joe Biden's political opponent, me. Let us come together to end all weaponization of our justice system and make America great again. So there you go. This one was dismissed, but there's still 4 cases he listed there. It will be, I am very curious to see, the immunity ruling, like I said earlier, being related to the J6 case, because that's what it came from. But it was the Florida case that was dismissed here. How is the New York case going to handle this? I think is it Judge Merchant? No, that's New York.
Yeah, I think Merchant's New York, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this will be very interesting, man. What a week. What a weekend. This is insane. This week's gonna be nuts.
This week is gonna be nuts. It's gonna be really crazy. So
because we got a VP announcement coming at some point. Some people are saying that it could potentially come as early as today, but that's happening at the RNC, which again this week. I think it wraps up Thursday.
Yeah. And Trump flew out yesterday for Wisconsin, so he's going to the RNC, and he even put out a post saying we thought about delaying it, but no, like we're gonna the show must go on, like we're gonna go move forward with it, which is awesome.
Yep, and I have that post here. I can share that quick too. Based on yesterday's terrible events, I was going to delay my trip to Wisconsin and the Republican National Convention by 2 days, but have just decided that I cannot allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to scheduling or anything else. Therefore, I will be leaving Milwaukee as scheduled at 3:30 p.m. today, leaving for Milwaukee. Thank you. There you go. And so we will be providing coverage of that throughout the week. I'm not sure if we're going to do just like a regular live stream or if we'll even have, Badlands hosts on air, but we will likely at least air a lot of this stuff this week, and we'll do our best to keep you guys updated. But is there anything else you want to say on the Trump stuff? Otherwise, we do have a few other stories you wanted to hit on.
Yeah, I would just say, like, and like closing thoughts on that for today would be, like you said, the fight. When Trump got up and said that, that was everything. It's like that's like the rally cry for where we go from here until November and even beyond that. Obviously, there's like the Q connections there, but even that aside, just the visual of that for people who aren't read in on the Q stuff, I think it's going to get everybody fired up. So,
oh, and actually, speaking of this, I don't know if this is legitimate. Yeah, okay, this is random, but I'm going to read this anyway, just because it's out there. Take it for what you will. But we have this Charles Gasparino. He's on Fox. He posted that the real Donald Trump Veep stakes are heating up, with much of the heat centering on J.D. Vance. GOP types close to Trump weighing in, equally both pro and con, regarding the Ohio senator, who many believe to be the future of the popular swing of the Republican Party. Oh, shoot, I lost my spot. There we go. Trump is either being disciplined about not letting on about where he's leaning, or he still doesn't know, according to two CEO sources who have spoken with him both just before the Saturday assassination attempt. Stories developing. But then there's this other post that he retweeted, and it says, Brett Baier on Fox News spoke with Trump this morning, and Trump said he's announcing his VP today. And I will say it is interesting, like how little of what Trump's actual thought process is on this has leaked. Like we haven't had this leaked ahead of time, and it's just there's a bunch of chum in the water right now, and I don't think anybody actually has an honest idea of who he's going to select. I think that's pretty pretty powerful to the difference between this administration and working towards this 2024 administration and what he had in 2016, where there was leaks and everything everywhere. It seems like he's got things a little tightened up this time around, which is great.
Makes you think also, like, maybe those leaks back then were intentional.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But yeah, it does sound like we're getting more confirmation here. It looks like his VP announcement is coming today, so that's exciting. Holy shit!
Damn, it's gonna be a hell of a week, man.
I know. Cannot wait. All right. Let's get to a couple other stories. I'll keep an eye on Twitter, though, as we go through some of this, if anything else comes out. But first up, we have China and Russia start joint naval drills days after NATO allies called Beijing a Ukraine war enabler. China and Russia's naval forces on Sunday kicked off a joint exercise at a military point in southern China on Sunday. This is just days after NATO allies called Beijing a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine. The Chinese Defense Ministry said in a brief statement, forces from both sides recently patrolled the Western and Northern Pacific Ocean, that the operation had nothing to do with the international and regional situations and didn't target any third party. And I'm very curious what your thoughts are on all this, because you follow, I would say, the global geopolitical field much more than I do. So yeah, man, give your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this all aligns with what we've been talking about on this show for a few months now, where the geopolitical chessboard is basically NATO and the unipolar hegemony against what we call the sovereign alliance, the multipolar alliance, what Putin and Xi and all of them have been pushing for a long time. I do have some graphics I think are worth sharing, because I think where this all plays out is Africa, and I've become pretty sold on that. Where let me share my screen and I can show you what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So this all kind of started. We won't go through all of it because we don't have time for that. But this all started months ago with this guy, Dan Gertler, and this story about him being targeted by Executive Order 13818. Here he is, name number 3 on that executive order, where Trump seized his assets because he's the scion of the Israeli diamond cartel. Here's an article up here where Hollywood said back in 2016 or 2018, or no, 2016, that the movie Blood Diamond was about him and about his family. And so he basically was using child labor to mine cobalt and copper in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Trump seized his assets as part of that. And then for the past few months, we have been documenting on this show how it's very obvious that Trump's executive order has been working hand in glove with Putin, the UAE, and even China to seize those mining rights, those mineral rights away from guys like Dan Gertler and put them in the hands of more responsible stewards who are not going to use child labor and human trafficking as part of their operation. The other thing is that the Paradise Papers revealed that what this guy was doing is he was making billions of dollars off these mining companies and then dispersing that cash to other Israeli billionaires. So he was kind of like the ATM for this oligarchy. And then there was this, a lot of scandal about Mossad trying to go into the Democratic Republic of Congo and retake control of it. And we had those narratives out there.
What app are you using here?
This is Miro.
Oh, is that the mind map?
Yeah, it's a mind map. It's a mind mapping.
Love that. I need to start using that.
Yeah, it's the same thing I showed you when we did that Middle East, East show. Yeah. So it's good stuff. But some of the other things we talked about on this show is we talked about the scandal 3 days after the Vegas shooting back in 2017. You had the Tonga scandal in Niger, where it was very obvious that the Pentagon was working with ISIS to kill a bunch of Green Berets and blame it on Donald Trump, and that's exactly what happened. And other Green Berets have now pursued FOIA documents to reveal that that's exactly what went down, and those people need to be held responsible. But what I found most interesting is this past week I stumbled onto a UN white paper that kind of confirms all of these different narratives. Another narrative would be Zambia and Zimbabwe. You have Putin selling Zimbabwe a bunch of excess fertilizer, kind of circumventing the World Trade Organization to do that. And then they had their greatest harvest on record this past year. Their neighbor Zambia then subsequently started receiving a bunch of military assistance and aid and cash from the Pentagon. And then Zimbabwe spoke to Putin and said, hey, this is making us nervous. Putin went and spoke to Zambia, and suddenly Zambia kicked out the Pentagon. They told them to get all their military stuff and get out of their country. And then they outlawed the use of the US dollar among other currencies. 10 years in prison if you're caught using US dollars in Zambia now.
No way. 10 years in prison?
10 years in prison and fines. And what's really interesting is back in February, it was reported that the Zambian kwacha is the #1 performing African currency against the US dollar.
No way.
The #1 performing US currency suddenly gets flooded with US dollars in their country. I think that explains why they outlawed the US dollar.
Oh, keep going. If you have more on this, I do have a question about some, NATO stuff once you're done. So keep going. This is great.
Sure. So this is a white paper that was published back in February of 2024 by Anna Caprio and Eric Pichon. This is published by the UN, or by the EU rather, and they're trying to frame Russia as the bad guy, as like the villain. And they break it down into 3 different sections. They show you diplomacy, military, and trade and economy. So in diplomacy, they show you a chart. This first map is showing the Russia-African summits from 2023, and it shows you who attended and which countries attended, and then who in the country came. So you have head of state, head of government, a representative at a lower level, or they didn't participate at all. Then here in this next chart, this is from March of 2022. This is the Africa's UN voting patterns as it relates to Ukraine, and you can see all the blue countries voted yes in imposing sanctions against Russia. The only country that voted no is Eritrea. Eritrea has a very, very based leader. They're great. So they're the only people who voted no on Africa. A lot of people abstained from voting. Fast forward to a year later, February 2023, and you can see that a lot more people either abstained from voting, or like Mali changed their vote to no. And then here they document all the changes. And so the EU is arguing that Russia is messing around, like they are intervening in Africa to turn Africa against the Western hegemony. Here we have military. So these are two maps. One of them shows the Wagner Group and their operations in this on this continent, and then the other one are military agreements. So first, let's look at Wagner Group. Now, before I look at Wagner Group, I'll show you this article from back from February, and this CNN article or CNBC article explains how you remember when Prigozhin was like assassinated.
Yep, the plane.
Yeah, the plane, and then they brought Wagner into like under control of the Russian military.
Yep.
So they broke Wagner into two different divisions. One division is the Volunteer Corps, and that's like the corps that's operating in Ukraine. The other one is the Expeditionary Corps, and that is the one operating in Africa. And this one, in addition to bringing in their own guys, they also recruit and train local fighters to defend their own territory. Kind of like counter to what the CIA has been doing for decades.
Yeah.
So going back to this map, you can see all the countries that are shaded are countries where that Wagner wields political influence. The ones with the little pink guy standing in there are where they actually have military presence. And then the ones that are have the swatch of the diagonal lines, that's where you have the Wagner Group and the Russian government both engaged in PSYOP campaigns to counter NATO. Because NATO, for those who don't know, their very first operation in Africa was 2011 to overthrow Gaddafi. And that was all predicated on a fake story that was produced by Al Jazeera, where Al Jazeera said that Gaddafi was giving his soldiers Viagra and ordering them to rape women and children, which was later proving completely false. But that was used as the predicate for NATO to go into Libya, overthrow Gaddafi, kill him, and then Hillary Clinton went on television and laughed about it. And then they raided his armory, took all of his tanks, his planes, his weapons, shipped them to Syria, and created ISIS. That was 2011, 2012. That's what the movie 13 Hours, like the Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, the whole Benghazi incident was about that scandal. So you also now have in blue, these are all the military agreements that Putin has signed with various African countries. The big orange circles are imports of munitions and military arms from Russia. So you can see Algeria and Egypt are the number one suppliers of Russian arms. These little like explosions around with dates in the middle are recent coups. So you can see this line of coups that are happening in Africa, right across from the Atlantic in the west to Sudan. And right here, this is a really important one where this little ship is. This is where Putin just negotiated in 2022 a naval base to be built in the Red Sea in Sudan. It is the first military base that Russia like ever had in Africa. Pretty important, pretty big deal. And so finally, we look at trade and economy. I'll also add, like this is something that I made on my own. This is just in June of 2024. You have the blue countries here were the ones visited by Lavrov, who's the Russian foreign minister.
Yep.
And the ones in red are the ones visited by Yunusbek Yekurov, who's like the deputy foreign minister. He's a pretty important guy. So they've been like just in 4 weeks, they visited all those countries. And these countries have been making a lot of waves geopolitically. We won't get into that right now. So then here's trade and economy. And so this goes back to all the things that we've been talking about on this show for many months. These talk about the mining rights. These talk about nuclear agreements. So everywhere you see these two hammers crossed, that's where mining rights have changed hands and gone from the Western hegemony to either Russia or the UAE or China. The ones shaded in yellow are where you have nuclear cooperation agreements. You have these various nuclear power plant, like these nuclear stacks. That's where Russia is going to be building nuclear power plants for these African countries. Last week on Breaking History, Matt Arrett, we were talking about the Chinese space program. Yep. He explained how China has been going in and building railroads across Africa. And in Ethiopia, they just recently gave the keys to the railroad to the Ethiopian government and said, "This is yours now. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to you. wield it responsibly. And this is a complete inversion of what happened with Cecil Rhodes back in the late 1890s, where the Rothschilds sent Cecil Rhodes into Africa in order to build railroads to connect Egypt to South Africa on behalf of Britain, and to also build railroads to connect French West Africa to Djibouti, to basically conquer Africa. You create a logistic supply chain, and then you use that supply chain to control governments. Same exact model they used in Central America and South America around the same time. They built railroads, and then they used the railroads to control government. So finally, I'll just show you this chart. This is kind of where it gets really encouraging. This first chart is military shipments. So exports to North Africa, and then exports to Sub-Saharan Africa. You'll notice that in 2000, Russia's right here. So you'll notice that between 2015 and 2019, there was an explosion in Russia shipping arms to Africa.
Yep.
That coincides with everything we just looked at. And then finally, this just kind of explains the non-military stuff. Russia is still relatively a pretty small partner for Africa in terms of trade. Most of their trade is military. But it just goes to show that the number one thing that Russia is importing into Africa, aside from military assistance, is food. So they're sending them food. They're sending them military assistance. And the whole reason this started in 2015, and this will wrap it all up, was that we had this story, which was kids were being abducted in Africa and raped by French UN soldiers. And that's basically what brought Russia in, is because we got this UN report that said that kids were being kidnapped and raped in Niger. And so that's what brought Russia in, and that's why all the people in Africa support Russia and the Wagner Group and what they're doing.
Okay, if you were to summarize everything you just said into like 30 seconds, how would you do so? Give us an example of that. The too long didn't listen.
Yeah. Basically, Africa is the chessboard, the geopolitical chessboard, like the risk game board, where NATO and the globalist hegemony are fighting each other for power. They're taking each other's resources. They are overthrowing governments, both good and bad. And they're engaging also in military skirmishes, kinetic armed fights. So Africa, for that reason, is, I think, one of the most important places to keep an eye on, because it really is a great weather vane for who is winning. And right now, it appears that the Sovereign Alliance is winning.
Amazing. And this is all interesting and relevant because we're on the heels of Biden's. Biden hosted the NATO conference there in Washington, D.C. And it's kind of funny. Nobody's really talking about that anymore. But there's still a lot of geopolitical ramifications from that. I mean, they want to bring Ukraine into NATO. I think isn't it Turkey that's basically saying, no, we're not going to allow that to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. They're trying to put in all these things that would be kind of permanent before Trump gets in. 'Cause I think everybody kind of acknowledges that Trump is likely going to be the president. That's the vibe everybody's getting, right? I still think they'll steal it from him, but that's for a different discussion.
Correct.
But the NATO stuff that just took place, and everything you're talking about here, the geopolitical stage is such an important aspect to everything going on. And we actually, speaking of the global stage, we have this is we talked about this individual a little bit on Wednesday's Power Hour, but U.S. envoy close to brokering ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon. And then out of 13 points of contention along shared border, 6 remain, including the Rosh Hanakra and Sheba Farms areas. I saw a post the other day before I read through this, because Biden, I think it was maybe Thursday or Friday, he announced that we're super close to the ceasefire. And somebody had commented that Biden has negotiated 7 of the last 0 ceasefires. That was super funny because it hasn't happened yet, but they've announced it like 6 times. But anyway, this Amos Hochstein is close to brokering this peace deal or a ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon, although several key issues remain, according to the Lebanese newspaper. he told French officials that Israel and Lebanese officials have almost completely agreed on a deal to end the hostilities, although the fighting has been between Israel and Hezbollah, not with the Lebanese armed forces. What is your take on this?
It's fascinating. Man, Kyle pointing this guy out. Big shout out to Kyle for putting this guy on my radar, because I'm definitely going to be following him very closely. So this guy, Amos Hochstein, he has a history of working with the Democrats, which is always concerning, but I could say the same thing about anybody who has a history of working with the Republicans. But pretty much him going in there, the natural gas thing that y'all talked about last Wednesday is really fascinating. He was on the same natural gas, a board member on the same natural gas company in Ukraine that George Soros said was the greatest threat to Ukrainian independence, I believe.
Yep.
That's really interesting.
Naftagaz.
Yeah, Naftagaz. Really, the way that I judge people in this day and age is I no longer judge people based on their political affiliation, Republican, Democrat, whatever. I judge them more on, are they promoting World War III or are they trying to prevent World War III? And if they're trying to prevent World War III, then I consider them a quote unquote white hat. I don't really care about the skeletons in their closet. I mean, that stuff should be held to account at some point. But what I'm looking for here and right now is, are you trying to destroy the world or are you trying to save the world? And it appears to me that this guy actually is trying to prevent a major conflict from happening, because everything we just talked about with NATO, you have Russia and Hezbollah have been fighting side by side for 12 years in Syria to protect Assad. Wagner has also been in Syria fighting with Hezbollah to protect Assad. Russia has given Hezbollah dozens and dozens of Soviet tanks. They have tanks. They have armored technicals, which are like vehicles that have been outfitted for combat. They are a legit military. They have a larger military than the Lebanese state army. Hamas is like a JV guerrilla. I mean, they're fighting in like tennis shoes and like ripped t-shirts. These guys, Hezbollah, they are fighting with legit equipment and are an actual like pseudo first world military. But more importantly, they have the backing of Russia and the Wagner Group. And they're in Lebanon waiting for the IDF to come invade, which is what the IDF has been threatening to do now for weeks. So if that were to actually happen, it would be really, really bad for Israel, because Hezbollah has already communicated to Israel, if you do this, we know that in Haifa, your deepwater port, your one deepwater port, we know that you have warehouses full of fertilizer chemical, that if we blow that warehouse up, it'll basically destroy Haifa and you will be without a port. We don't want to do that, but we will do it if you invade Lebanon. So it seems to me like Hezbollah is actually trying to prevent a major conflict. And there have been stories written by Israeli media that actually say that both Hezbollah and the IDF leadership do not want this major conflict to unfold, because they know that it's going to devastate Israel if Israel goes and fight. It could potentially be the end of the IDF. Like if they go and invade Lebanon, they may not come back. Wow. If you share my screen real quick, I'll explain what might potentially undermine that and prevent that piece from breaking. So here, last week, Brian and I, we covered this guy. This guy gave a great presentation back in May of 2022. This is a journalist in Israel who explained like the internal politics of Israel and why Netanyahu has been put in a really bad position, because he has lost all this moderate support and he's been forced to bring in these radicals from more radical fringe elements of Israeli politics. This guy, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and this guy, Bezalel Smotrich. He's the Minister of Finance. Ben-Gvir is the Minister of National Security, and they are part of the Security Cabinet of Israel. Because this guy, Benny Gantz, resigned, who I believe Benny Gantz is working with Trump, and I think he's Trump's guy. Because he resigned from the government, now if either one of these two guys resign, they can effectively dissolve the government and force new elections, which Netanyahu will most certainly face Gantz in a runoff, like in this new election, and he'll probably lose. So every single time any decision has to be made, these two come out and say, Netanyahu, if you don't do exactly what we want you to do, we're going to dissolve the government and your political career is over, and you will be prosecuted for all those corruption charges that you've been facing now for 3 or 4 years. that's important because what these two want is they want war. They want war with Hamas and they want war with Hezbollah. And every time a ceasefire deal comes up, they say you better not take that ceasefire deal no matter what. So what's important about that is those two guys are part of a group called the Lahava movement. And the Lahava movement was founded by this guy, Meir Kahane, who we talked about last week. Here is his successor. This guy's name is Binzion Gopstein. This is an article from 2015 where he says that Christians are the deadly enemy for hundreds of years of Jews. He says he laments the fact that the disgust for Christians among Jews has disappeared in the democratic age. And he has publicly insisted that setting fire to Christian churches, killing Christians, that is all perfectly acceptable and should be done. And what I can say is that he was actually charged with incitement for making these statements back in 2015. The lawyer who defended him, this guy, Itamar Ben-Gvir.
Interesting. Can you be a little more general with the story?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
So basically, what's happening is that Amos Hochstein, the guy that we were talking about with that article, is trying to negotiate peace between Hezbollah and Israel.
Yep.
These guys, these radicals, the Meir Kahane guys, are trying to prevent that. They are telling Netanyahu, if you take this deal, if you negotiate any ceasefire deal with any of these terrorist groups, we are going to dissolve your government, and you will basically probably end up in prison because he is facing corruption charges going back 3 or 4 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, in my opinion, I've been saying this for months now that I think Trump is running a counterinsurgency against the Israeli government. And the reason he's running the counterinsurgency is because you have radicals like this, crazy people who want to kill Christians, who have taken over the Israeli government and are leading it in a direction that will ultimately, I think, destroy Israel if they're not stopped.
Gotcha. I mean, definitely something to keep an eye on. This is another one of those situations. Like, I think we may not see actual resolution to much of this until Trump is back in, the peacemaker role, but definitely could be wrong. I don't follow the major geopolitical stuff, maybe other than the Ukraine stuff a little bit. But we do have this out of Russia. What to know about the growing number of treason and espionage cases in today's Russia under Putin? I haven't read this article. This is something you said over. Can you briefly summarize your thoughts on this article as well?
Yeah, so basically, they're lamenting the fact that more and more people in Russia are being tried under treason. They do note the fact that Putin has come out and said that he doesn't think that treason should have a broad interpretation. He thinks it should have a very narrow interpretation. When you engage in treason, it's very obvious. It's not something that should be like lightly charged. But they kind of list out all these different people who've been swept up in this: journalists, corporate executives who go and work in Moscow. And I would just counter that by saying, if you study the history of the CIA, and I have done that, you know that the CIA, all intelligence agencies, use operatives in the form of journalists. They use operatives in the form of executives. They use operatives across the entire society, like all throughout society, to go into foreign governments and infiltrate them. And so just because a journalist is being arrested and charged with treason, or an executive is being arrested and charged with treason, doesn't mean the government charging them with that is draconian or tyrannical. They could have legitimate reasons to charge them with treason. So the fact that this is like ramping up and escalating in Russia, hopefully that's a sign for things to come here in America, because I think a lot of us would agree that we have traitors in our government.
Yeah, it's almost like a template that we should potentially be running here, and obviously the Western media is going to spin these stories about Putin, to their benefit. But have you noticed any foreign leaders commenting on Trump's situation? I know I think I saw it was Saudi Arabia who made a statement.
Yep. What's really fascinating about Saudi Arabia is that MBS has this pattern of calling country leaders on the day of their Independence Day. So that's like 193 countries. He calls every single one on their Independence Day and congratulates them. Then puts out a press release. He did one on July 3rd. He did 3 on July 5th, and he spoke directly with Blinken on July 4th and didn't congratulate him on Independence Day. Yeah.
Did he speak with Trump? Do you know?
What's that?
Do you think he spoke with Trump?
I mean, if he did, it wasn't reported. It wouldn't surprise me if he did, though. But they did come out with a really great press release yesterday, and just said how they stand with the American people. They stand with Trump. They have Trump's back no matter what. So yeah, it's exactly the kind of rhetoric that I would want to hear from Saudi Arabia in this situation.
Yeah, I think I have that statement right here. Let me share this. Oh yeah, I got it shared. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia sent a heartfelt statement of support for Donald J. Trump and announces the attempt on his life. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its condemnation and denunciation of the attempt on the life of former President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. It also expresses its complete solidarity with the United States of America, the former president and his family, and affirms its rejection of all forms of violence. Also, condolences to the family of the deceased and the friendly American people. Its wishes for the speedy recovery of those injured. It is interesting, the complete solidarity with the United States after they just recently decided to no longer solely accept payments for oil in the dollar. I mean, that doesn't sound like complete and total solidarity, if you know what I mean. But I know this was more along the lines of what happened with the shooting, but still.
It's fascinating. Definitely fascinating.
Yeah. And then just a couple more things. I'm going to have to get close to wrapping up here, but I'm perusing social media, trying to get a vibe of what else is going on. And yeah, I think it's pretty much confirmed, allegedly, that we are getting the VP today. So that's huge. Social media is just going nuts with this Jack Smith thing. And man, I can't wait to read through what is actually in that order. Just Human is saying that it was Clarence Thomas's opinion from the immunity ruling that was used as justification.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. Is there anything else that you can think of that we were going to discuss today, man? I'm going through. I think we got the Hezbollah stuff.
I mean, it's worth mentioning that.
Oh, this.
It's worth mentioning that Shinzo Abe was assassinated on July 8th, 2022.
That's right.
Almost 2 years to the day before like the attempt this past weekend.
We should talk about this too, real quick. I think this is important. Ex-NATO ambassador tells Ukraine to conscript teenagers.
Yes.
And I think talk like this is interesting because, especially here with all the rumors of us implementing a draft potentially in the United States, and to see it actually in action over in Ukraine and how they're handling it. Do you want to give any comments on this?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So originally it was the draft age was 27. Then they lowered it to 25, and that was considered a really, really big deal. Now they're saying that these NATO people are telling Zelensky to lower it to 18 and just say, draft every able-bodied man in Ukraine, draft them. And what I know from digging into this stuff is that the people in Ukraine have been trying to escape. You have people hiding out in their apartments. You have people being nabbed off the street by like military recruiters. So I would be interested to see if this is going to result in like a mutiny, like against Zelensky and against like the Ukrainian brass, because I don't think they're going to go along with this. I think the people of Ukraine are like completely fed up with the war and are over it. So
yeah, man. I can't imagine. I've seen videos of people like the military going and ripping, males away from their family, like in the middle of the street or from their house, just to send them to the front lines. And like they can't be giving these guys much training. These aren't people that signed up for it. They don't want to be there. They're basically just throwing them out there to get killed. And I think that's terrible. The people of Ukraine do not want to be fighting this war any longer the way it is. But it's still dragging out, and we have rumors of Zelensky asking for some sort of peace conference with Putin, and he wants it done before November, before the election, because he thinks he'll get more favorable terms with the current administration than with Trump. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Do you know where that peace conference is going to be held? It's going to be held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in September.
Of course. So it is scheduled now.
Well, it's something that they were talking about doing back in May, like when they announced that one they did in Switzerland in June. Saudi Arabia was like, yeah, we're not going to go to that one. We're just going to host our own peace conference. And then when Zelensky was flying to the G7, he stopped in Riyadh to meet with MBS and be like, dude, why aren't you coming to the G7? Like, I thought you said you were going to come. And he's like, nah, I'm too busy. I'm not going to do that. But since you're going, go deliver this message for me. And we just found out last week what that message was. And the message was, hey, G7, if you seize Russian assets, I'm going to tell all my friends to sell off the treasury bonds that they're holding. And it's going to crush your central banking system. Wow. And they went ahead and did it anyway. They went ahead and seized the Russian assets. So
insane, man. This week's going to be awesome. These next few months are just going to be incredible. It's just so interesting right now.
August is going to be crazy. I feel like August is going to be like where things reach a fever pitch.
Yep. And you know what? The best place you could be in August when things are reaching a fever pitch is GART Deadwood. Guys, our GART conference is coming up. Let me pull this up, because if you don't have your tickets yet to attend in person, we do have they're available. You know, we don't really have a limit necessarily. I mean, we do obviously, but we still have more space. We can kind of grow the room as we go. So go to badlandsmedia.tv, click on events, and you can get your in-person ticket to the Deadwood GART. I will be at some point discussing some sort of golf outing we're going to do either Thursday morning or Wednesday afternoon. I got to get on the horn with some golf courses around there. But for those who are attending, we're going to be doing some private live streams, for exclusive ticket holder live streams as we get closer to this, probably starting in the next week or two. And so we'll discuss those in more detail there. But you can get your in-person tickets on the site, or you can get your virtual tickets. We do our best with the virtual tickets to make the experience almost as if you were there. And so you'll get access to a private chat on Telegram. You'll be able to discuss with everybody. You'll be able to ask questions, engage, and you can also support us in the process. Some great content. You won't have to miss out on our regularly scheduled programming that we won't be airing because we're at GART. So I'd recommend you guys to get your tickets in person if you can, and if not, get those virtual tickets so you don't miss out on any of our exclusive live streams. And you will be there, Ghost.
I will, and I'm looking forward to some golf, man.
Are you a golfer?
Yeah, I'll definitely come play. I've only gotten to play a few times this year, but I will definitely come out and play for sure.
Awesome, man. I cannot wait for that. Another thing I just want to mention real quick, Ash, her trial is starting today. That's why CanCon's out. He's up in Colorado covering this. So prayers to Ash. Keep your eye on her social media, our social media. We're going to update you guys as we can. I believe she is representing herself with this, which
she is.
I mean, props to her. The amount of work she had to put into getting prepared for this is crazy. So definitely keep her in your prayers, thoughts and prayers. And I think I just have one more thing I want to read before we tune out, unless you have anything else you want to say, man.
Just the rants, but yeah, we're
oh yeah, let me just read this quick, because I saw this going around yesterday. This is from Stephanie Tyler. No idea who it is, but the story here is pretty fascinating. I think this is a vibe for a lot of people after what happened on Saturday. So she says, I graduated in 2012 with a degree in women's studies. I cried in 2016 when Trump got elected, lost touch with the Dems somewhere around the Me Too movement, discovered entrepreneurship, updated my voter registration in 2018, but didn't tell anyone, told myself I was a single issue voting centrist. The last 6 to 12 months, I believed I was going to abstain from voting in the upcoming election because the options are equally terrible. But watching Trump survive an assassination attempt and act like a total fucking savage just shifted me into some strange patriotic gear that my fancy feminism, white men, bad infected brain never showed me. Like the dude took a bullet and stood up with blood dripping down his face and rallied a fucking crowd while fist pumping, yelling, fight. Sorry, but I'm voting for that. And saying out loud feels so freeing. 2012 Stephanie would be so pissed, but that's okay because 2012 Stephanie didn't know shit. That's the vibe I think we all need to kind of embrace right now. There's going to be a lot of people waking up, joining our side. And like I said, this is our time. There's no longer an excuse to be apathetic and no longer an excuse for your friends or family to be either. So
yeah. And be humble too. When those people come forward and like say something like that to you, it's like, you're going to be inclined to say, I told you so. There'll be time for that in the future. But I think that's also kind of self-evident. I would just, welcome them into the fold and understand that we're trying to build something that is going to crush the most powerful organization of all time. So
100%. Yeah, it was a pivotal moment in history the other day, Saturday. So let's get to the rants, man.
Yeah. All right. Stretchler, $5. Canon dismissed documents case. Yes, thank you for that. I saw you posted that right as we were getting started. Q of Swords 3, $10. Here's a clip of DJT catching the bullet and dropping it on the podium. Thank you for that. Let's see. We got Denise Ann 2, $1. I know Vance was critical of Trump in the beginning, but have you considered that he may have had a change of heart and now is completely on board with Trump in his vie on the USA future? Yeah, I mean, I'm open to like everyone who changes their mind. I mean, that's not the issue. I don't really want anyone who's like in Congress to be the VP. I mean, I kind of think that Flynn, Robert O'Brien would be great. General McGregor. It's like those are like the three, and then obviously Pence, because I think that's devolution proof. Like I would prefer to see one of them as opposed to like somebody from Congress, but that's just my take.
Yeah, you know, I've said this a lot. There's no matter who Trump picks, I'm going to support it, and I'm going to believe that he knows exactly what he's doing. There are selfishly some picks that would lend credence to the devolution theory, like a Pence or a Bryan or really anybody from, you know, if you go look at my part 13, anybody in the, you know, Devo circle, like any of those guys, I'd consider that a Devo proof. But also on the flip side of it, it would add to it. But any of those guys not being selected doesn't take away from it either. So whatever phase of this awakening mission that Trump's on and whoever they pick, I'm good with it. So I'm just excited to see who it is and kind of get over this threshold. You know what I mean? I'm kind of excited to just work towards the election stuff, and so I'm very curious to see who he picks and excited about it. But once it's out, we go from there.
I agree with all that. Steve Zinnia, $20. Scavino post Sunday 9:28 a.m. He explained head turn to Jumbotron. Dan never explains post. QAG search Jumbotron only one. Q1294. Godspeed Patriots. Stay strong. Stay united. Boom. Week ahead. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then I think we have a few more. Power Cell 99, $5. Can you pull up Q post 2190 and show it? I don't have that handy, but John, if you want to pull that up, I think we have one more I can read. Which one is it?
What Apple or what post was it?
It was 2190. 2190.
Yeah, this is the one that the guys discussed on the live coverage right away. Absolute Conviction and Stormy Patriot Joe, who I believe are going to be adding another show to the network probably sometime in the next couple weeks. But yeah, they showed this Q post with a fist bump, fight. Very, I mean, the stuff like this you see is like, holy shit, maybe it was scripted, but
I know. It's crazy. It's wild, man. It's definitely crazy. But all right, two more. Hopeful Therapist, $5. John, please review the post from Rumble Jam. I didn't see anything that should have earned him the boot. Just disagreement with others in chat. Maybe I missed something. Thanks. And then Ginger, because $5. General Flynn just posted about a whistleblower. Interesting.
I'll have to go read that too. It looks like it's a pretty long post. In terms of the Rumble Jam thing, when I see people that I recognize in the chat who have been with us for years saying like, hey, you got to get rid of this person because they're a troll or whatever, I will err on the side of their judgment and take their word for it. The person wasn't banned forever. They're just banned for the stream. So they can come back and make their case at a later point. But I'm going to trust the people who I've seen in the chat for years with who they say we should are disrupting the chat. Let's say that. But yeah, man, Gordon, this has been great. Where can people typically find you?
Best place to find me is probably on X, Ghost of BPH. I have a Telegram channel as well. And then Breaking History, noon Eastern time on Wednesdays.
Yeah, and you have maybe we don't have to give details, but you just booked a pretty cool interview coming up in a couple of weeks that we'll be promoting once we get a little closer. So
yes.
We'll keep you posted on that. But yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. I will also be hosting or co-hosting tomorrow's Badlands Daily with Absolute Conviction. So you'll see me tomorrow morning, and then also tonight on Basis Conspiracies with Zach. Maybe we'll be doing some sort of conspiracy theory around the shooting stuff. I don't know. We'll see, but make sure you guys tune in for that as well. And other than that, guys, have a great Monday. What an exciting week ahead. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Ghost. We'll catch you later, man.
Later.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.